So we're going to talk about making the move to Proxmox VE. First, about Proxmox, then some important details kind of in the middle, and then how Croit can help you build a smooth transition. So first and foremost, Proxmox is a fully clustered hypervisor that runs your virtual machines and containers. It can replace ESXi and vCenter or really any other hypervisor. Clustering is built into every node by deliberate design. There's no required separate appliance for that. So if that appliance were lost, it can take the cluster down with it and make certain troubleshooting aspects a nightmare. Again, with Proxmox, all of the clustering is built into it. All of the clustering information is passed around node by node. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Under the hood, the KVM engine is what runs the hypervisor. That's the same core virtualization technology that all of the large hyperscalers use in their clouds. It's battle tested and is at massive scale. And Proxmox has basically taken its own open source software and other open source softwares to build a friendly management layer on top of that. As I mentioned, it is open source, so there's no feature paywalls for that. All features are included. That's the clustering, live migration, HA, backup, firewall. The subscriptions essentially buy you tested updates and support, but all the features are there with it. And then Croit is what makes it enterprise ready by offering 24/7 365 support. Proxmox GmbH also, you can buy some support tickets with that. However, it only covers a limited number of hours. On top of that, Croit has training, consulting, and everything that we sell can be quoted in USD or Euro. Again, it's open source, and that is actually a built-in risk mitigation strategy. So as Evan Miller has said, jumping from one proprietary software vendor to another carries the same risk. Not with open source. If a private equity company buys it, someone forks that software and carries on. Basically, it's a speed bump, not a brick wall. So avoid making the same mistake. Think about the future and the expensive lessons learned in the past. So again, it has happened. Open source projects have been purchased by companies, and forks happen. So for example, MySQL was bought by Oracle. The community forked it, and now we have MariaDB. Both projects are alive and well, but MariaDB has no real association directly with Oracle. So that's just an example of, you are mitigating risk by choosing open source. Also, Proxmox specifications, its source code is AGPL v3 license, so you have access to documentation, forums, bug trackers. All of that is public. There's also no wall knowledge base articles. Everything you can find directly on the internet to get you what you need. And what that means for you is the open source mitigates the biggest risk in this decision. Your skills, your automation, the process is built on something that no acquisition or license change can take away from you. Also want to talk about hardware. This is a really big selling point. There's no forced hardware refresh. And also the sizing exercise is very similar to any hypervisor that you're probably using today. So again, no hardware compatibility list. Proxmox itself runs the Linux kernel. So if the Linux supports the hardware, then Proxmox will run on it. With enterprise gear, that's about 95% of what is out there, probably actually higher. So you can keep or reuse your older hardware. So unlike those hypervisors that use an HCL to force you into newer hardware, you can basically redirect that budget that you would be using for new hardware or increased licensing to things that you actually care about that make your environment better. So redundancy, storage, DR planning or DR sites. And again, it's pretty easy to size compared to, for example, VMware. CPU and memory needs are very close to what you would see in VMware today. So it's pretty easy. It's a familiar sizing exercise. It's really not that difficult. Also, we are happy to help select or validate hardware as part of a consulting project. So for example, Ceph needs some enterprise grade drives. We are Ceph experts. That's table stakes for us, and saves you the trial and error. If you already have existing storage, that's fine, keep it. Proxmox is extremely flexible with existing storage. There's some caveats, and I'm going to point some of them out now. But for example, NFS is the easy path. It's reliable, it's well tested with Proxmox. The rule of thumb in general is the newer the NFS version, the better. Again, that's a rule of thumb. This is also the most common storage that we see alongside with iSCSI. So I want to talk about iSCSI and Fibre Channel really quickly. I tell this to every customer that wants to reuse some type of block array. Proxmox is great with it, but you got to make sure that things are set up correctly. There's no equivalent of what VMFS was doing for VMware and Proxmox, and so it's just a matter of kind of following the right order. So for your VM disks themselves, you want to make sure that you configure discard and SSD emulation, that the data store itself is formatted in LVM thick. And then on the array side, make sure that the Proxmox LUN is then provisioned if you have deduplication or compression, go ahead and have that turned on if that is what you're wanting on that array. And then the array itself, basically the SCSI calls that are needed pass through the chain to the array. So the result is that the guest deletes flow down to the array, space stays reclaimed, and also just an FYI, snapshots work as a chain in newer versions of Proxmox. There is a caveat if you're using block storage, is that you can only restore to the newest snapshot, and that's for now. So the good news is these details are exactly what training and a short-term consulting engagement would cover. So these are just kind of examples. So you would learn them in addition with a classroom and with our guidance, and not run into these things while you're running in production. Again, Proxmox is very flexible with storage, but I wanted to talk about the first-class citizens of Proxmox. So if you have a very small cluster, a two-node approach is exceedingly common. You would basically just set up local storage on each host, format that in ZFS, and then configure a ZFS replication so that you're replicating those bits of data asynchronously from node to node, hopefully in a short time period. And so if you need to fail over, all the important bits of data are on the other node to come up. Much more common is kind of the larger and medium size Proxmox environments. So if you're looking at doing an HCI type build, basically the disks are in the nodes themselves, and you're using Proxmox with Ceph to build that software-defined storage layer that your VM storage uses. We kind of say from about the 3 to 7 node range is kind of the sweet spot for that, for the disk drives themselves to be in the same host and go with the HCI style. Ceph is a first-class citizen of Proxmox, so you get snapshotting, thin provisioning, all of those things, essentially with no caveats outside of or out of the box. And then I want to talk about the situations where having a separate Ceph cluster as your back-end storage kind of becomes important. So if you want to be able to scale that storage independently, or if you're needing external services, that's when you want to start thinking about the external Ceph cluster. And so I call this the HCI trap. If you need to expand your HCI nodes, you need to buy nodes that closely match what you have already. So if you need more storage but not more compute, you still have to pay for both. So anybody that's been running vSAN, Nutanix, VxRail, chances are you know what I'm talking about. And so that's the area where an external storage Ceph cluster would pay off. To go a little bit more in depth with that, the HCI, I already kind of called out, you would want an external one if you need additional services. The Proxmox deployment of Ceph is for Proxmox only. So any type of external things that Ceph can do are outside of support specifically for Proxmox. And so again, kind of going back to it's perfect for the 3 to 7 node clusters. And then the external Ceph scales independently from that. So again, you're kind of getting outside of the downsides of HCI. And again, you can do S3, you can do file, so NFS or SMB, or CephFS if you're dealing directly with Linux clients. And then also block, so RDB, if you need to do some type of gateway like iSCSI or NVMe over Fabric on top of those RDBs, you can do that. If you have multiple vendors, there can sometimes be finger pointing at each other. Fortunately, Croit supports both Proxmox, and we're experts in Ceph and support Ceph, and even have our own Croit Ceph offering as well. And so there's no finger pointing if you're using the same support vendor for both of those products. External Ceph tends to make more sense, like I said, as you expect to grow past 7 nodes. Also, one thing that I've failed to mention so far is if you're small, but you're expecting to grow fast, that's another scenario where you probably just want to do an external Ceph. And then I've already mentioned, S3 or outside access to the storage. And then finally, if you have platforms like Kubernetes, you can link those up to an external Ceph array as well. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the clustering, specifically Corosync, which is the thing that actually transmits the clustering data around node to node. And so I tell this to every customer as soon as I can, just to help with their planning. And because we would rather nobody run into any issues. If a hardship is avoidable, we would like to avoid it. So for Corosync, the best practice is having 2 separate network links just for Corosync. These should be dedicated. You can kind of think of it as like a heartbeat network. So 2 separate VLANs with 2 IP ranges. Each link has its own path. So one switch problem can't take down both, or one misconfiguration of a VLAN, you still have one good VLAN. We don't want these interfaces bonded, especially with LACP. Corosync has its own failover mechanism, so bonding would just hide those link failures. And also, it's really important that you never share VM or storage traffic with Corosync, because if something were to happen and latency keeps the cluster from hearing from other nodes for a certain period of time, it will get fenced out, and in an attempt to self-heal, it will reboot the node that has been fenced out, even though it may have just been a legitimate traffic spike, or maybe somebody ran a script somewhere that is now causing some type of short-term spike. So again, bandwidth is not the issue. It's all about latency. So the good news is preferably 2 1 gigabit Ethernet links built onto the motherboard, or a separate card is fine, right? So you don't need to use more expensive ports for that, and it doesn't need to be bandwidth intensive. So the big thing is these recommendations are just a sample of a lot of the best practices that we discuss in the training class, which is why we really recommend the training, and I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Another thing that we talk about is clusters need an odd number of votes. It needs a tiebreaker so that you don't get into a split brain scenario. And so our recommendation is basically just to add one inexpensive, it can be a single socket Proxmox subscription to an old server. It can even be a desktop, just something somewhat reliable. It won't need to run workloads. It's just there to provide the deciding vote, so that we have an odd number. Updates move lock in step with the rest of the cluster by doing this, because you're going to be updating the same Proxmox that you do with all of the nodes that are running your VM. So there's nothing extra to maintain. And most importantly, if you have that set up with Proxmox, it will be supported as well. There's a common do-it-yourself alternative, and that's perfectly fine, but some caveats to that, and why it's our recommendation just to go ahead and purchase an additional license is that you can install any version of Linux, run the QDevice software. It works fine, but you're doing it on your own. You also need to make sure that you're patching that Linux server yourself forever. So as things move up from an update standpoint on Proxmox, that's just a little bit extra work for you on the Linux side. Also, specifically the code for the Q device itself, you want to keep lock in step with the versions that are running on Proxmox itself. So basically, it's a lot of additional effort when it's really inexpensive just to set up another single socket PVE that's just there to be a tiebreaker if you're needing an odd number of votes. If you already have an odd number of servers to begin with, then you're fine. So again, this is another type of thing that we would discuss in our Proxmox training class. A little bit of a bonus tip to help out anybody that is looking to do the migration. Linux migrates over from VMware very seamlessly. Windows, you need to install VirtIO drivers. You want to have the QEMU agent installed. But Windows has a thing about, even if the driver is installed, it only loads certain drivers for hardware that has previously booted up in the OS at the time of boot up. So what you have to do with Windows is basically install the VirtIO drivers, do the migration, and then there's something that we call the SATA shuffle, where you have to attach the disk as SATA initially, boot it up, install the drivers, shut down, reattach, and boot up again. Basically, flip things back so that you can ultimately get to a SCSI, a virtual SCSI controller. So you would have to do this for every VM, every Windows VM. So we have out there publicly available for free a script that one of our engineers developed, and you can run it while the Windows VM is still on VMware. It stages the VirtIO drivers, basically making a dummy device. And after the migration to Proxmox, the VM just boots up. You don't need to do those extra steps of switching it to SATA, no extra reboots. Again, it's on GitHub, so anybody that we talk to, we recommend this, especially anybody that we're consulting with, because it just saves a lot of extra clicks and steps and time that it takes to do those steps. And so that kind of leads us to what we, over time, working with lots of different customers that were in lots of different places, lots of different sizes, we've kind of developed a bit of a playbook. So I tell this to everybody: follow this playbook. Today, you're on your current hypervisor, you have sticker shock from the renewal, and you're looking to go to Proxmox, hopefully after an evaluation period where you've seen how well it works. The most important thing is to create a baseline skill. So that is taking training. Once you have that baseline skill set, that will make a big difference. You figure out what is different about Proxmox than your existing hypervisor. What is the same? What is it named here? Are there caveats to how I would do something in Proxmox versus how I would do it with my old hypervisor? And so you learn these nuances before you go into production. Then take our consulting. That will shore up any gaps that would be there. So we will collaboratively design and validate the environment end to end, have a migration path per VM, do any hand holding or help you with the difficult integrations, but with the end goal that you are self-sufficient. And then finally, that leads up to the PVE subscription, and most importantly, our 24/7 support. So basically, you have access to the enterprise repository that gives you the validated updates. And then Croit provides the 24/7 support. You need a few amount of hours because we've set you up for success. So our end goal is basically a reliable, repeatable environment. So to talk about the training, what you learn is basically, again, what's different from your current hypervisor. Importantly, the best practices that we've learned from years of real-world experience. And you get the foundation for self-sufficient engineering and production operations. And what it looks like is the training itself is live, instructor-led. It's delivered virtually. They're half days, so you can spread them across 2 weeks. You'll be basically drinking from a fire hose because it's a lot of really good information. But being half days, it helps you retain what you've learned and lets you keep any real critical work that you're doing as part of your day job. Another bonus is that you can take what you learned during that day's work and apply it to your own POC. You have all of the training materials that you would be using in your virtual environment. And another nice bonus is that you can get a 20% discount once you complete the training for Proxmox subscriptions, as long as you purchase within 60 days. And then to talk more about the consulting, at a really high level, the consulting is basically just a bucket of hours with Proxmox experts. Some things that we commonly talk about are reviewing your environment end to end, helping you configure the storage the right way, making sure you've got the best practices down, helping you with the VM migration, basically figuring out the best way to do that, hand-holding where you want it, and any knowledge transfer along the way. We can validate hardware. We can help you select it if needed, including the Ceph requirements if you're going the HCI route. Typically, about 8 hours is fine, as long as you have taken training. 16 hours for more complex things. You can always talk to us directly about the consulting engagement, because it will be tailored more for your needs. But for most customers, between the 16 and 18 hours is what we see in most cases. The support itself, and I think this graphic really shows it all. Croit offers 24/7 support. Proxmox GmbH itself, it's Austrian business hours. It's 5 days a week, excluding holidays. And so how we would work with you directly, we have a ticketing system, same as Proxmox GmbH, but in addition, we can do live screen shares. And then optionally, we can do direct VPN access. Again, that's optional, and it's a situational thing. You can turn it off when you don't want it. A little note is we intentionally don't have a 1-800 line. Phone trees, if you've used any support with any vendor that has a 1-800 number, you tend to find that you get kind of a jump around before you actually get to the team that is needing to support your thing. And so we actually find our way is better, and we far exceed SLA expectations, because we get you exactly the right people as soon as the ticket is opened up. And so kind of talking about it all real quick, our offerings are the licenses and subscriptions. We can work with you directly on the PVE licenses and discussing, what's different between the community. If that is all your needs are, then it will save you some money. If you have some other needs, then usually it's PVE basic. So if you have multiple clusters, or you're using GPUs, and or if you're wanting some additional tickets directly with Proxmox for things like questions, then that's where you would tend to use basic. The training, I already talked about training, and the fact that creates the baseline. It also can potentially get you a discount. In some large environments, that discount may even pay for the training itself. Consulting, again, customers who take training first always need far fewer consulting hours. And as part of consulting, we will expand that baseline, because we will be discussing your environment specifically. The 24/7, again, tickets go straight to our support team, and our customers are extremely happy with our support. Outside of our 24/7 support, I wanted to mention that we do also provide emergency support. So you can go to our website, click a button, fill out the information, and basically we're one step away. So what we need to get a proper quote is let us know the number of clusters that we're talking about, the servers per cluster, and the number of sockets per server. We also need to know, we need to figure out and work with you if you want community or PVE basic licensing, and then your desired 24/7 SLA. Most commonly, it's 1 hour, but we can go higher than that as well. And the really time-wise, the most important thing is with the mass exodus from other hypervisors, our classes are very popular. So we always say reserve the training seats as quickly as you can. Classes are typically booked 2 months in advance. And again, the classes are half days spread across 2 weeks. So it's great for retention, but you can also still do your day job as well. And then ultimately, see it live. Proxmox is free without the PVE subscription. So you can go and deploy Proxmox with the community version or the community repository completely for free. And so you can set up your own POC. If you don't have additional hardware laying around, you can use your existing hypervisor to set up some virtual PVE servers and start testing it out, getting it ready. The more time that you are able to touch and feel it, the better you will be. So those are the main topics that I wanted to cover. If there's anything specific about your environment, we are happy to have these conversations with you. Thank you, and I'll be talking to you later.